Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. I'm indeed honored and barely beyond words that I got this amazing opportunity. So I'm going to start off with a poem by spoken word buddy. In the heart of Miami, where cultures entwine, on November 24th at the stroke of 4, two visionaries meet, their paths align to unravel the mysteries of AI's core. Stephanie Sylvestre, a beacon of light with roots in IT, a journey profound. From Burger King to Subway, her insights crafting Avatar Buddy where solutions abound. A member of the Lynx with a heart so wide, empowering communities, lifting each voice. Her mission to bridge the digital divide, to make technology a tool of choice. Enter Dr. Joy with a story to tell on masking AI, her book, A Clarion Call, exposing biases where shadows dwell. For justice and equality, she stands tall. Together they sit under Miami's sun, a dialogue of change, a dance of the mind, exploring AI's power, what's lost and won, in their world, a future redefined. Stephanie asks with wisdom and grace about the journey, the struggles, the fight. Dr. Joy responds with courage to face the systemic barriers brought to life. In the exchange, a tapestry weaves of technology, algorithmic justice, and dreams untold. A spoken word symphony, one that believes in a world where every voice is bold. So gather around, let the stories unfold. At the Miami Book Fair, where ideas ignite, Stephanie and Dr. Joy, a narrative goal, inspiring us to envision the light. In the heart of Miami, where cultures entwine, on November 24th at the stroke of 4, two visionaries meet, their paths align to unravel the mysteries of AI core. So, thank you. So I am going to get right into it. And the first question I have, Dr. Joy, is let's talk about this amazing cover of your book.
Oh, thank you. So this cover was designed by Algerian-French illustrator Malika Favre. You might have seen her covers on The New Yorker and others. And it shows me in this pivotal moment where I literally had to put a white mask over my dark-skinned face as a student at MIT. Here I was, this epicenter of innovation, working on an art project that actually used face detection, and it wasn't detecting my face. So I started experimenting. I drew a face on my palm. It detected the face on my palm. It happened to be around Halloween time. That's why I had the white mask. A friend invited me for a girls' night out, and she said, let's do masks. So I thought she meant Halloween mask, but she actually meant Korean beauty mask. So had I known that, this whole thing might have never started. But thank you, Cindy. So because of that mistake, I had the white mask there, and I put the white mask over my dark-skinned face, and the white mask was detected as human while I was not. And so that's literally where my research began. And Fanon already said it in his book, A Dark Skin, White Mask. I just didn't think it would be so literal. And so that's how we got to the title, Unmasking AI, and the cover as well.
Thank you. So I'm sure that you've encountered this, as I have during my journey about educating people about AI. When I read your book, I just was really moved and fascinated by how you wove everyday occurrences in with complex thoughts and broke AI down to a level that anybody can understand. So talk a little bit about your writing style and what made you choose that path.
Got it. And I have a writing style now. This is fun to hear. Because when I was approached to write this book, I was really fortunate. An editor from Random House slid into my DMs. And I looked at who she was. She had maybe 4 followers on Twitter. So I was like, But one of them was President Obama. So I was like, all right, let me return this, right? So all this to say, I kind of found my way into this world of writing, and I was working on my PhD at the time. So I was under the fiction that my PhD would be the book. That's not what happened, very much because of voice. So as I'm going through and I'm writing this academic piece to get the Dr. Joy title, we called it Mission Dr. Justice, the voice wasn't what I wanted it to be, because I wanted people to feel my humanity. I wanted to go from performance metrics, which were all of these AI test algorithmic audits, right, to performance arts. So you could actually know me from being that idealistic researcher, immigrant coming in, to having to face tech giants like Amazon, or what it was like to get a film like Coded Bias made when no one believed in the story, to then have it go be Emmy nominated and all of that, or almost dropping out of MIT to start my skateboarding career, which didn't happen, right? You know? And then along the way as a poet, I thought this would be a great way to drop in some bars if I'm going to be published anyways. So throughout, I add poems that reflected where I was at that particular time in the journey of the book and with unmasking AI. So it's an eclectic representation of the poetic elements of myself, the science communicator as well, and really trying to make it feel like people were with me. So when I'm in Davos and the snipers, right, are fixing I want you to feel like you're there, you know? So that was how I wrote it.
Thank you. So a little bit more on present day. Being a Black woman in the AI field is emotionally wrought, if you want to say being conservative at best. And I wanted to, you talked about like the getting blocked at the door, and the security guard not even taking the time to validate if your name was on the list. And that really like spoke to me, because I have an AI company, and there are times when I'm presenting and I see people that have like a minuscule of AI knowledge look at me and say, so who's the brain behind this? And then getting a little indignant when I say I am the brain behind this. Like, just so I can just imagine, I mean, because what you're doing is multiple times complex to what I'm doing. So how do you process that emotional fallout? And for the people in the room that are having to deal with that, what are some tips that you can give to them?
So I write about this in the book. There's this chapter, I think it's the streets of Belgium, gates of Belgium, because I'm talking about gatekeepers. So I was invited to be part of the EU Global Tech Panel headed by the Vice President of the European Commission. One of my mentors, Megan Smith, who's the former Chief Technology Officer of the United States, had invited me on. So she pulled up a seat at that table using her privilege and access. So I was feeling myself. I'm like, okay, here I am, EU Global Tech Panel. I roll up to Brussels, and I tell them that I'm here for the meeting. And they tell me literally, that's a meeting for important people. Right? So I look around, I'm like, okay, I might not look like the gray-clad diplomats, which was true. So I was like, well, I have an invitation letter, right? Here's my invitation letter. I kid you not, and I write about this. Anyone could have printed anything offline, which is true, but still, you know. And so at this point, I'm just hoping the international plan doesn't fail me now. I managed to get hold of the secretary there, and they come down and they give me this special badge. And I'm literally the only one who's wearing the special badge to kind of say that I'm supposed to be in this place. And then he finally looked at the list to see my name, which could have been the process from the beginning. And so that was gatekeeping that you were just speaking to, right, that we experience in different ways. And then I was using that in the book to also talk about the algorithmic gatekeepers that are happening, right? So it might be the hiring, instead of it being the hiring manager, right, who might not want to hire women or something like this, now it's the faceless AI interface or systems that you don't even see as well. And in my case, I could contest it. Right? There was somebody I could reach out to, but so many of the AI systems that are being used in our lives, you can't contest the power you don't see. This is something that I at times call the coded gaze. So some people might have heard of the male gaze, the white gaze, the post-colonial gaze, this cousin concept, which is really about who has the power to shape technology, to shape the priorities, the preferences, and at times the prejudices. And then to your question in terms of how do you navigate, in that space, it was having to stomach what just happened while doing what I came to do. So in that space, that was actually when I first shared my poem, AI Ain't I a Woman? And it shows some of the biggest tech companies, Amazon, IBM, Google, mislabeling or misgendering the faces of iconic women like Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, Michelle Obama, right? And so in that space, after that experience is happening, I'm saying, can machines ever see my queens as I view them? Can machines ever see our grandmothers as we knew them? Ida B. Wells, data science pioneer, hanging facts, stacking stats on the lynching of humanity, teaching truths hidden in data, each entry and omission, a person worthy of respect. Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed, the first Black congresswoman, but not the first to be misunderstood by machines well-versed in data-driven mistakes. Michelle Obama, unabashed and unafraid to wear her crown of history. Yeah, her crown seems a mystery to systems unsure of her hair. A wig, a bouffant, a toupee, maybe not. Are there no words for our braids and our locks? The sunny skin and relaxed hair make Oprah the first lady. Even for her face well known, some algorithms falter, echoing sentiments that strong women are men. We laugh, celebrating the successes of our sisters with serena smiles. No label is worthy of our beauty. And that was literally part of the algorithmic audit that I was showing them, that I almost was blocked from even delivering. And the head of the World Economic Forum was in that room. One of the co-founders of DeepMind was in that room, representative for the president of Microsoft and so forth. So in that space, having that conversation, bringing us in literally, right, through poetry to ground conversations about AI. And so later on, that very same panel engaged with all of the EU defense ministers ahead of conversations on lethal autonomous weapons. So the poem is a bit of how I show up, right? We celebrate our successes with serena smiles. So there's all of this pain that's happening, but I still know I was there on assignment. I had something to do. So I had to put that aside in that particular moment and then write a whole book to process.
Okay, so for those of us that don't know how to write, I guess we have to use AI to help us get our words out. I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, I think I approached the world, right, with my artist hat and then also my research hat. So when I was an undergrad at Georgia Tech for a while, we didn't really have to write that much, right? Our currency wasn't in how well we put words together. It wasn't how well we built machines and tools. And it wasn't until I was in the UK studying on a Rhodes Scholarship where I was like, okay, these people are really about words, lots and lots of words, right? So in a way, I kind of felt like, I wasn't equipped or I wasn't prepared. And I learned it was more about voice than words, right? So the message you have to share, and sharing it in whatever way is actually true and authentic to you.
Yes. So just kind of following up on that. So what about the people that don't have the technical acumen to navigate the complexities of AI, or to even start understanding why what's happening, what advice do you want to give to them? Because as much as it's overwhelming at times, we do need to take steps in order to make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on, or this will get away from us.
Such a great question. I love to say, if you have a face, you have a place in the conversation on AI. And in this whole journey, right, in terms of, the academic experiences and the technical knowledge and so forth, what really made the Algorithmic Justice League, I think, resonate was storytelling. It was having the courage as a student who experienced what I felt was a pretty embarrassing thing. Like, here I am, MIT, and I'm putting on a white mask to be seen. And I didn't realize how far that white mask would travel in terms of story, in terms of impact. And so I think right now we all have the opportunity to tell stories about our lived experience. That's exactly what I was doing, right, at that Halloween. And so sharing your stories about how AI is impacting you, what you're seeing, and also sharing the stories of how it's impacting others. For example, not too long ago, there was a report about a 14-year-old boy who sadly self-harm, trigger warning, took his life after interacting with a character created on character.ai. And his mother says she believes he'd still be alive if not for the kind of emotional bond that was kind of created with this particular AI entity. And in the book, I open with a man in Belgium whose widow also says a similar thing, right? Her husband getting involved with this kind of AI chatbot that went sideways. And in those cases, they're not AI experts per se. They're people with lived experience that is really important to share, because that actually informs how do we create systems, right, where there isn't the emotional manipulation or ways in which we might think we're putting out something good, but ends up having unintended consequences. So that's a big way that I think a lot of people can engage now, because the tools are more accessible. When I started, you kind of had to have the technical knowledge to really dive in, but now you don't.
Yes, it's great. So I want to go back a little bit to the amazing poem you just spit out for us. I had to get my AI to write my poem for me. It's definitely not as good as yours, but why ain't I a woman? I mean, that is such a powerful piece of American history, and I think that it doesn't always come up to the foreground as much as it should, especially when you talk about women's movement, women power, and so forth. And I just kind of want to unpack that a little bit more, and really ask you, just to be authentic and raw, if possible, in what was going through your mind when you went with "Ain't I a Woman"?
Yes, so AI Ain't I a Woman was inspired by looking at the research results I got when I tested systems from IBM, from Microsoft, and others. And I was testing gender classification, so guessing the gender of somebody based on their face. What could go wrong, right? So that's what I was testing. And what I found was that overall the systems worked better on male-labeled faces than female-labeled faces. There was no concept of gender fluidity or anything like this. It was just binary gender classification as done by the machines. And then they overall worked better on lighter labeled faces than darker labeled faces. But then I did this intersectional analysis, right, looking at lighter males, lighter females, darker females. And I found that the results varied except for one group. The darker females, the women like me, they always had the worst performance. So let's say, for example, in one case, the performance gap was 34%. in accuracy, right, for lighter males and darker females. So because of that performance metric, I wanted to change that performance metric to performance arts. So that's why I go back to that phrase, can machines ever see my queens as I view them? Can machines ever see our grandmothers as we knew them? That's literally coming from the numbers that I'm seeing. And I wanted to do something I now call an evocative audit. So you have the AI audit, the algorithmic audit, that's testing the different AI systems. And there, yes, you get the numbers, but you don't get the emotional piece. And so when I say my heart smiles as I bask in their legacies, knowing their lives have altered many destinies. In her eyes, I see my mother's poise. In her face, I glimpse my auntie's grace. In this case of deja vu, a 19th century question comes into view in a time when Sojourner Truth asked, ain't I a woman? That's going back to the history to say this is part of a much larger history and line of inquiry about what it even means to be seen on your own terms. Because I was referencing Sojourner Truth's 19th century talk, ain't I a woman? And in that case, she was actually challenging the women's movement to say, wait, what about women of color? We're part of this conversation too. And so that was what was going through my mind. I knew that the research paper, even though it's literally one of the most cited papers in its field in this category, would only reach a very small number of people. So I wanted to break out of that. I wanted to break out of the lab, and poetry was a way to do that.
Thank you. I will say I love the fact that you're using poetry to make AI accessible, because as you start talking about it and you're using poetry, you realize that it's really not scary. It's actually very easy. And when we look about the history of AI, it's been around from the 1950s. So I want to kind of touch a little bit about your style, not because I'm being shallow, but because
you like these boots.
I was like, love the boots, love the different glasses, the glasses on the cover of the book. But one of the things that when you're in the space, people look at you as a woman and they sometimes say, well, you don't look like a computer scientist person, or you don't look like an IT person. And I always, whenever they tell me that, I always stop to think, what should a woman in computer science look like if not like me? And, you know, these are what I call like little microaggressions that after a time can wear on you. How do you like keep the movement going? Because this is a fight. I mean, and we have to enroll so many people to get to where people understand that, like, you cannot leave an entire class of people behind in this revolution. So how do you, the first question, just to make it a little tighter, is how do you intertwine your stylistic, your beauty, your accessory, and then how do you like have that, does that help you keep the momentum going in this like brutal revolution that's happening to make sure that a segment of the population doesn't get left behind?
Yes, I think there are a few parts. One, by the time I started my 4th degree, PhD at MIT, I have lion parents. Some might have heard of tiger parents. These are the African versions. So it's like you haven't arrived until you've stacked it up. So I was just working. My dad's the original Dr. Buolamwini. He's a professor of medicinal chemistry, pharmaceutical sciences. My mom's father was his advisor. And he was also a professor of medicinal chemistry, right? So that's like the lineage that I am coming from. And then my mom is an artist. And so I grew up with the world of art and science in literal companionship. If you think I have style, like most of this, like from my mom's, you know, raiding her closet and that kind of thing. And so for me, it was kind of how I grew up, and also being from Ghana and being of 2 tribes and wanting to represent that identity, that just felt natural to me when I was younger. As I got older, it became very clear that, okay, the STEM kids are over here, the art kids are over there, and you need to choose. And by the way, you're an athlete, and that's kind of messing up this whole thing, what's with the pole vaulting and the basketball. So all this to say, I was always in that case, right, like, you don't look like you should be in any of these classes. You look more like an athlete. I've been hearing that all my life, that I never look like the thing I'm supposed to be. And so after a while, you just kind of have to be who you want to be. And so in the book, I talk about being at the Media Lab and the company Ministry of Supply coming out. And it was supposed to be space fabrics, right, for everyday use. And they only came in men's sizes, right? Even though at that time women were about 33% of the Media Lab. And so there are just these constant reminders that you were not the norm. Just like the white mask, you are not the norm. So in that space, in these whitewashed walls, it was actually a deliberate act to be the splash of color that I was anyhow, even if it might get me blocked at the EU Global Tech panel because they're looking me up and down trying to figure out who's there. But I feel that's been the story of my life oftentimes. And when the film Coded Bias came out and people saw my style and things like that, I would get all sorts of things like, your white glasses are distracting from your very important message. I was like, well, if you were paying attention to the message, maybe the glasses wouldn't really matter. Or people feeling seen. In the film I have them do a scene where my hair is being braided, right? Or there's a scene where I'm praying with my partner at the time, and that those human moments people really latched onto, I thought was important. So that experience of how people reacted to the film, the style in that film, made me realize, oh, this is another way to speak, right? As to who gets to do tech, who gets to be an AI expert. Anybody, and you can look any way, right? And this is how I look some of the time, you know? So there was some freedom there for sure.
That's great. So just building on that and being seen, we are seeing with our research, both formal and informal, that AI is giving voice and agency to a whole class of people that we would otherwise discount. So when we were building our company, we went to Liberty City and Overtown and West Perrine and Miami Gardens to get people to help us write the requirements and test it and give us feedback. And that really positioned us to be about 2 months ahead of OpenAI. So whenever OpenAI came up with a way to use AI, we already had figured it out and we're deploying it. And so as much as there's a lot to be concerned about with AI, we are also finding that it's given agency to people that wouldn't otherwise have a voice. And so I wanted you to see if you could spend a few minutes talking about how to navigate that, because that's a very tight rope that you need to navigate, and when one misstep could cause you to careen in the wrong way and create negative unintentional biases, but positive steps gets it to a point where this class of people now have a voice, can be seen, and can assert themselves in ways that they have never been afforded before.
That's interesting. I'd love to get your lived experience of that, because one thing I learned while I was at the Center for Civic Media, that was the group I was a part of at the MIT Media Lab. We were always thinking about tech and society, but tech was a way to have conversations that needed to happen anyway. So for example, we released the Promise Tracker app in Brazil, and this allowed people to document civic issues, so maybe potholes or school lunches, right? Elected officials said they would improve the school lunches. Did that actually happen? And so the technology became a way to have documentation, but it also became a way to bring people in conversation that that otherwise wouldn't have been in that conversation. So in that way, when I was thinking about some of my earlier work in Ethiopia, working on neglected tropical diseases and using mobile tablets to make it easier to collect the information for health systems, those were all kind of like this tech for good kind of exploration. And then as I got further in, when it came to AI, I saw oftentimes what was positioned as supposed to giving people voice stripped away their voice, right? Or stereotyped their voice as well. So I'd be really curious how you're using the technology in terms of providing people with agency and so forth.
Well, this is your interview, so I'm only going to do 2 data points, then we're going to turn it back over to you. But for one thing, we took about 1.5 years to make sure that our AI sounded like the people we wanted to have use. And that was a struggle to really find voices with the appropriate accents that could understand. So that's kind of what we're doing. And the other thing that we're seeing is that I did a TED Talk with this woman from Overtown, Lavette Moore. She runs the Women's Club of Overtown. And what we did is that she's using AI to help write resumes. And why is that important, right? So the AI helps her rewrite the resumes of individuals, and they're seeing themselves in a new light. And that's given them a whole different way to process themselves, giving them self-confidence. But the other piece of what they're saying is that they're coming back and they're talking about the jobs that they're getting. So somebody in their 40s got a job for the first time where there's benefits and career pathing. And that is a lot for a community to be able to be gainfully employed in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. And obviously that is given Lavette a lot of agency as well. And she's now coming and we're talking about all these really cool plans we're going to be doing for 2025. And we would not be having that conversation had it not been for AI giving her some kind of agency. So that for me is very powerful because that's something that I've been trying to figure out since I was 9 years old. How do we solve the problems of poverty and why some people get to have a voice and some people don't?
No, that's powerful.
Okay, so back to you.
Like, we can't have all this brilliance and not hear about it.
Well, I appreciate that. So just coming back, what are you, when you think about 2025, 2030 and beyond, what do you want to see the world look like in terms of AI and making sure that there's appropriate guardrails?
And I love this question. And I love that you're in green because that's something that I think about a lot. Green AI, sustainable AI. Right now, many of the AI approaches are so energy intensive. I was reading a study somewhere where they were estimating putting a prompt through ChatGPT can be like pouring 8 glasses of water, depending on the time of day. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be this way. We have different flavors of AI that come out. We're in this transformer flavor moment, and it's gotten a lot of hype, and people are seeing that. But there are alternative ways of building it that aren't as energy intensive. And so by the time we get to 2030, I want there to be green AI where we can be happy, about the kind of environmental footprint that's associated with these technologies. I also want to think about what alternative ethical AI pipelines look like, because so many of the leading companies, they're facing lawsuits, artists, writers, authors, right? Some of the best of what we see of AI came from the best of what was created by humanity that was taken without consent, without compensation, pay, without credit, right? It's like, where did you get that nice poetic sound from poets, right? It didn't just come from anywhere, you know? And then also control, right? It could be that you want to experiment with some of these AI systems on your own terms with agency. We should have that, and we should have that with the ethical AI pipelines, with the green AI. So that's the AI future that I want to be a part of, and we can be part of advocating towards that. That's part of why I started the Algorithmic Justice League, because truly we're all impacted by these AI systems, and so we do have a voice and we do have a choice in shaping where it goes.
This is wonderful. I'm glad to hear that there's an alignment with where we're wanting to go and where you're believing it should go. So before we open the floor for questions, can you drop one more poem?
Okay, yes, we'll let the audience choose. So I have a poem. One is called Unstable Desire. It's the way the book ends after a conversation, roundtable with President Biden. And the other is called The Brooklyn Tenants, which was written to people on the front lines who successfully resisted AI installation that they found harmful to their community. So, show of hands, Brooklyn Tenants. Show of hands, Unstable Desire.
Okay. It looks like Unstable Desire wins.
I saw Brooklyn Tenants. Okay, how about both? How about both? We have time for both.
There we go. Yes.
All right. So I'll start with Unstable Desire. This book is longer than I thought. Okay. It's in here somewhere.
So,
there it is. Unstable Desire, page 289. Unstable Desire. Prompted to competition, where be the guardrails now? Threat in sight will might make right. Hallucinations taken as prophecy, destabilized on a middling journey to outpace, to open chase, to claim supremacy, to reign indefinitely. Haste and pace, control altering deletion. Unstable desire remains undefeated. The fate of AI, still uncompleted. Responding with fear, responsible AI beware. Prophets do snare, and people still dare to believe our humanity is more than neural nets and transformations of collected muses, more than data and errata, more than transactional diffusions. Are we not transcendent beings bound in transient forms? Can this power be guided with care, augmenting delight alongside economic destitution? Temporary band-aids cannot hold the wind when the task ahead is to transform the atmosphere of innovation. The android dreams entice, the nightmare schemes of vice. Poet of code, certified, human-made.
Thank you.
We can do questions, and then I can end with the last one.
Okay, well, thank you to both of you for talking to us today. I had a question because, Joy, I've been teaching the Netflix documentary Coded Bias in my class. It's a freshman composition class at Florida Atlantic University, as well as the New York Times article by Kate Metz, I think you were interviewed for as well. And of course, it's the freshman composition class, so I walk them through. You have a thesis statement, you have a call to action, and that I like to stress to them, like, this is your essay. What do you really see as the point of what you're writing here? In the documentary, I think you're really good about presenting calls to action, and my students always point out the moment that you're sitting before Congress and actually trying to work with the legislation side of this issue. And then when I ask the students, okay, so how many of you are going to now do that? Or how many of you are going to be willing to do something like that? They all kind of like, well, not me. I hope maybe it's the person next to me, but not me personally. So I wonder, what would be your advice to students in that position who aren't going to realistically seeing themselves going up to Congress, the state, things like that, but still have issue with what you're saying about AI and these topics at hand? What's kind of like a realistic pathway for them that you could advise on?
Got it. One of the things I'm proud of with the film Coded Bias is it shows Deb Raji, who was an undergrad. It shows me as a grad student, right? And it shows some of these aspirational spaces, not to say that's something you have to do, but it is to say that is something that could be a path for you. So for some seeing that, we've seen youth organizations like Encode Justice, high schoolers around the world, where they've actually put together an AI policy agenda as well. I'm always surprised with the middle schoolers and elementary school students who also reach out with what they're doing for algorithmic bias as well. But I also hear your question, the deeper question, right? It can feel overwhelming to fight for algorithmic justice, right? Like, what do I do on the day-to-day? And that's why I think the sharing your story and the lived experience is really important. We have report.ajl.org where people can talk about how they're experiencing AI. So sometimes students will talk about the use of AI to try to detect if they are cheating or not, and e-proctoring and what their personal experiences have been, because sometimes it's less daunting, right, when you know that you're going to a space where people are open to hearing those experiences. One thing we encourage everybody to do is when it comes to airport face scans, if you're traveling, you actually have the right to opt out of these face scans, and most people don't even know. And it's usually even faster. You just stand away and you say, I want the standard check. They look at your face, they look at it. You're not trying to get the lighting right, and you go through. And each time you do that, you're actually voting for biometric rights for people like Robert Williams or Portia Woodruff, who were falsely arrested due to facial recognition misidentification. So I think it's important to, again, emphasize that your experience matters. One thing we love to do with the Algorithmic Justice League is this workshop called Drag versus AI. We developed it with the Boston Public Library with high schoolers. And so we have this workshop where people are actually testing AI systems and seeing how the AI reads their face. And then they can we do the invisibility chamber. So see if you can have it not detect your face at all. We do the infinity chamber, play with age. Can you look older? Can you look younger? And then that starts a conversation about, well, how is AI being used within your classroom or your school? Are there surveillance uses? Are there uses you would like to see? And so in those spaces, I've really seen when there is the expectation and also invitation to be part of the conversation, and also the validation of the importance of their experience and their perspective, then we see more engagement in that way. Because I know if you see coded bias, it's like, go do that. That might feel a little overwhelming for sure. And part of the reason I wrote Unmasking AI was to also talk about how that film almost didn't get made because people didn't want to bet on somebody who looked like me as the lead in that sort of film. I talk about almost dropping out of MIT and what the dynamics of that were like. And so sometimes when you see the glory but you don't know the story, it can also feel less accessible. So I think hopefully as you're teaching this to your students, you're also showing them some of the things that didn't go so well, right? Because that's part of the journey too.
I do compare for them how you're introduced in like the article versus the film, and how there's like Legos behind you. So thank you for that advice.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I enjoyed your lecture. I just got introduced to AI when I was looking at 60 Minutes. So, I started out with a typewriter that wasn't electric. So it's slow motion. But as I saw that documentary, they were, talking about how they could, write an essay and refer to particular authors and their concepts. And I was just wondering, with Project 2025, would it be possible for AI to analyze it and have students discuss what their future goals and objectives are, and then see how it matches with Project 2025 in terms of, policy?
That's a provocation. I'd love to see that exploration happen, because I would also, one of the things we see sometimes with these AI systems are hallucinations. So I'm not even completely clear that the summaries produced about a text like Project 2025 would be completely accurate. It really depends on the type of system. But if we're assuming that could even be part of that assignment, right? Because we've seen this happen so many times where cognitive labor is assumed to be easily taken by AI systems when it isn't. So we saw a lawyer, for example, using a chatbot for one of their cases, and it cited case law that did not exist, and they were actually debarred. Right. And so I think it's so important that we continue to have these examples of where AI goes astray. So we are limited in our expectation and also our trust. And you'll see many companies now, they'll say, we stand behind nothing that came out of this. Use at your own risk. But as people continue to engage with it, generally, if you're not a subject matter expert in that particular topic, you're not necessarily going to know if what you're getting is actually what's in there. So I think even an assignment like that, there would be another piece of, is what we're getting accurate? I was talking to the Library of Congress about this, and this will be ever more relevant, right? It is the Library for Congress, and they have congressional researchers. And one of the things they wanted to do was summarize legislation. There's a lot of legislation to read. But because they're Library of Congress, they have to be right. Right? It can't just be a hallucination and so forth. So they actually found in that particular instance, it was taking them more time to fact check the summary in the first place. So all of this is just fascinating to me because we're still in the early days of how these systems are being developed and where their weaknesses are, but also where some of those weaknesses can give us insight into what it is to gain expertise, what it is to have deep comprehension, what it is to sit with the text for not just seconds, right, but days, weeks, years, and so forth.
Well, I gave my 8th graders Project 2025 2 years ago, and they looked at me like I was crazy, and I thought maybe if I would have presented it with a computer that they would, because they check everything I say based on, what Wikipedia or somebody else has said, as opposed to what I had to say. But I'm hoping that that'll be the future with the AI, that they can understand the legislation better.
It might get there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
There are technology right now called small language model that's working on it to make sure the AI is a little bit more effective and less about hallucination. So it is in the works, and that's something else that we do at Avatar Buddy, is using small language model to make your responses more accurate. Thank you, Dr. Joy, for a riveted conversation. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see you at the book signing.